And welcome back to No Free Drinks. You are talking with your boy Wesley, Brock, and Lina D.
Hey.
And we're going to talk about meeting the parents for the first time, being in an interracial relationship. Oh, joy.
You sound so excited.
This topic actually was sent to Ben from New York, and he wanted us to give us a special shout out to his fiance Lauren. Hey, Lauren, how you doing? Everything all right? Hopefully you're a listener out here. I think you are, because he did mention that. So we wanted to give a shout out to you. So shout out to you guys and your upcoming wedding. All right, let's get right into it.
Tying the knot. Well, this is like the very, very, very first step if you ever want to tie the knot is like meeting the other person's parents.
Oh, man.
It is.
That's
so
nerve-wracking as fuck.
Definitely. I've introduced two ex-girlfriends to my parents. Very drastically different scenarios. So first ex-girlfriend, so I'm of Caribbean descent, and then so she was also of Caribbean descent. So that was kind of pretty seamless in terms of like there was no cultural differences, no like language barrier, everyone speaking English, kind of like do's and don'ts, didn't really have to go over that kind of stuff. It was my parents' wedding anniversary, so it was kind of a big deal, but like I didn't really have to like coach. It wasn't too much coaching per se, so it was pretty seamless. More recent times, several years ago, ex-girlfriend was Irish.
Oh.
And so my parents, so we still live in the same neighborhood in Brooklyn, which is not gentrified. So that was my first concern. I was like, do I take this train or just fucking take this Uber? Just avoid all this awkward looks. Like, I don't mind, but like, I don't want like the lead up to her meeting my parents, which is very nerve wracking. Like the looks from other people we may pass. And then, so I mean, big part of it is as pretty much the go between her and my parents. It's kind of like, not educating, but like giving them like a quick rundown about each other. So like,
right.
Hey mom, dad's in the picture too, but like my mom's a much better texter, and then she'll tell my dad everything the second after. So I just usually communicate through her.
Oh, okay.
So like, all right, mom, this is her name. This is what she does for a living. This is what she likes to do. Yada yada yada. And I do the same thing to her, and then kind of like so make sure they're on the same page, and then also pick activity that everyone's kind of like cool and comfortable with. So we just ended up doing like Sunday lunch at my parents' house and watch football. Like everyone is a big fan of football, different teams. I'm Giants. Parents are like faux Giants, between Giants and Jets, and ex-girlfriend was Packers. I actually think the Giants was playing at Packers that Sunday. So kind of just like just kind of like sat around, watch football. My mom loves to cook, so like her go-to thing is talking to the girlfriend like while cooking. Doesn't necessarily have to help her, but like just be in the proximity and kind of like shoot the shit, and like she'll pick your brain. So yeah, so I think definitely like pretty much educating all parties about each other beforehand. Unfortunately, our parents' generation are not always the most open-minded. So like, and then we know definitely our parents respectively. So I mean, you should know like how receptive your parents can be to your significant other. So like, give the significant other heads up, like, hey, mom and dad might say do this. Please don't respond. Apologize ahead of time. But like, also be willing to like nip that shit in the bud. It's like that's just there's no reason for that. So like, that's another thing. Like, just be ready to like also nip that in the bud.
Right.
And then I would say the third example is when I was introduced to my ex-girlfriend's parents. This was actually pretty early on. It's about a month-ish in, which wasn't ideal, but her parents lived across the country. They only came into town like once a year. It's like her sister's birthday, who I've met a bunch of times.
Oh,
and
okay.
She's like, oh, do you want to come? It's like, yeah, why not?
Yeah, sure.
Mom's there, dad's there, sister's there. So she's of German descent, German American. And then so my go-to, all the moms I've met of someone I'm dating or a girlfriend, whatever, is always go for the moms first. Mom likes you, dad gonna fall in line. Like you're not gonna get the dad to like you outright.
You've obviously haven't dated Latinas or met Latinas' parents before.
No, I have not.
Okay, so we will talk about that.
Yeah, it's been
later.
primarily black and white women, and so my go-to is like go for the mom, and mom's pretty cool. Mom's like, "Do you want to do a shot?" I'm like, "Oh, it's right up my alley." I was like, "Yeah, let's do some tequila shots." So we're doing some tequila shots.
Right.
She's like, "Oh, I like this one." And so we're ripping some shots, and then she's teaching me German. So we're like, everyone's like teaching me like German phrases, and then so then after that, the rest of the party goes smoothly. So yeah, I've had a little bit various different meeting the parents stories.
Okay. Well, I only have like less than a handful. I got like 1, 2 of them. One of them I was working with. This is when I was like a teenager or whatever. And she was a friend. And we ended up hooking up just one time. So we're gonna call her Haitian Vicky. So for those that don't know, I am actually of Caribbean descent, primarily Haiti, if you haven't figured that one out. So yeah. But get right into the story. So I was working with her at the local wall bounce or whatever. And and we ended up being like fast friends. She was a cool ass person to hang out with and be with, but we were just what I said, friends. But this one day after like working together for like a year, and I always thought she was cute, but it never dawned in my head like, hey, you should hook up with her or anything like that. Cause that wasn't it. So, this is back when Axe spray came out, like the body spray or whatever. So I used a little bit of that.
You fell for them commercials.
Yeah, I fell for them stupid commercials. But I this shit did smell good though.
It did smell good. Yeah.
So I'll wear it a little bit. So she came up, she picked me up to go to like the party, whatever. But she came and she had to go inside to meet my aunt, of course. And my aunt was just like, oh, blah blah blah. Like, you're nice, this, that, whatever, because she's Haitian, of course, and like my aunt's Haitian, so all great, everybody's kicking in together. So as we're leaving, she's just like, oh my god, you smell so good. She was like all over me. I was like, well, this is weird.
Well, this is a good side bonus.
Yeah, this is awesome. Whatever. So as she was driving, I knew my aunt wasn't gonna have anything to say. This is when I was a junior in high school, and the school year wasn't up yet. So that means that, man, the weekends, you got to be home 11 on Saturdays.
That Caribbean curfew.
Yep. But I could tell by the way that my aunt was talking that she wouldn't have cared if I'd gotten back around like 1 or 2, which actually did happen. So whatever. Go to the party, had fun, whatever. She had to drop off one. It's funny. She had to drop off 2 guys, right? And out of the 2 guys, she's actually married to one of them now. But so I was just like, yeah, just drop me off last, whatever, because I'd rather just be out, and it's Saturday, and I ain't gonna do shit the Sunday the next day. I ain't got work to do or nothing. So as she like pulls up or whatever, we start making out in front of the house. Like, we're literally all over each other.
In front of your aunt's house.
In front of my aunt's house. Making out completely. Just didn't give a fuck.
I'm like, that's ballsy as shit.
I was just like, I had a shirt like halfway off or whatever, and I could see like the light in the house turned on. I was like, oh fuck.
Uh-oh, red-handed.
Like, oh fuck. No, she didn't catch me. It was just like the light turned on. Like, she probably just wondering where I was or whatever.
I thought she hit you with that flicker. Like,
no.
I
see you. She called me. She was like, "Oh, so where are you at?" I was like, "Oh, I'm still with Haitian Vicky or whatever," because I'm not calling her. I'm still with Vicky or whatever. She's like, "Oh, okay, cool. I'm gonna leave the door open for you, the gated door or whatever. I'm gonna leave that open for you. So just come in or whatever. Because I locked it earlier that night. She locked it earlier that night. She actually turned on the light to see where she's going to unlock the door, and then the light went off. But at this point, she had done this. Vicky was like, "Nah, I don't think we should do this here." I was like, "God That would have been my first time. God, no. I was trying so hard to like coax her to like do it, and she was like, "Nah, I can't."
Your aunt's still cock blocked.
It's like fucking hell. That was the first time. The second time, it was actually meeting Lina D. Right out of the gate, as good as the feeling I got with Vicky, Lina D, however, was like almost the complete opposite.
So opposite.
She was just like, "Oh, so who are you?" But okay, no. Let me backtrack and say, when Lina D used to come around, and she's met my aunt before, and I introduced her as my friend because that's what we were. We were friends. Everything was all good. When she found out that I was going out with Lina D, however, attitude just flipped.
Yep. Because she had met me before. She had invited me into the house.
Everything was all good.
Like, offered me food. Because we both went to, like, you know, we were, like, in the same neighborhood and stuff. So we even saw each other in the community kind of thing.
Yeah.
So she was like, "Oh, okay, you guys are friends." She was, like, always super nice.
Right. And then she found out, like, I was going out with Lina D.
Trusted her baby. She don't play that shit.
She was just like, nope. She was just like, "Oh, so what kind of shirt?" Because Lina D had a open back shirt or whatever, and we were going out. I forgot where we were going.
We were going out on a date.
Yes,
and I was going to pick you up.
Yes. So as you can tell, the central mantra here is that I get chicks to pick me up. Hey. Anyway, that's besides the point. But what ended up happening was that, like, she was just like, she had the stank look, like, when she turned around, and she was like, "Oh, so at this point, I'm like 21, 22 years old, so there's not a damn thing you can say to me about me coming home." She was like, "Oh, so what time are you coming home?" I was like, "I'm coming home. I'll get home when I get home. Like, just make sure you leave the fucking guard door open." Like, what the hell? She was like, "Oh, okay. Well, have a good time." And then she just walked right into her room. I'm like, "Well, that's weird. You've never been like this before." Oh, I think I know why. Ever since then, it's just been a lot of passive aggressive undertones. It's more one-sided with my aunt than it is with Lina D, but Lina D is kind of a fighter too. So yeah. Good luck with that one.
Well, it's just interesting because to Brock's point about kind of prepping both sides, in this situation, Westley really didn't prep her. And I didn't even think about it either, even though I had thought about it when he came to meet my parents. So I think it was more of a cultural thing where I guess your experience had been that she's always been nice to me, so it's not going to change when you find out that she's actually my girlfriend.
Exactly. And I didn't think that was going to change because it was just, she's the same person. It's still Lina D. Nothing has changed except that we go out. What the fuck is the problem?
Oh, no. My parents were very...
Oh, no. My parents growing up...
suggestive about who I should date.
Yes.
So once I knew I was dating someone that didn't fit this like little cookie mold, I was like, "Oh Lord." I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna have to do a lot of prepping." And
right.
I have a strong personality. My parents know, like, I'm not gonna fold to the demand.
Right. And
so it's like, it's either you get on board or you don't. Like,
right. For me, it was the same thing. You either get down or you lay down. Yeah. Like, we're not gonna have this conversation about like, "Oh, you should be going out with a Caribbean woman or a black woman or anything." Like, chill the fuck out. We're not having this conversation here. I get it. Like, it blows your fucking mind, but relax.
Yeah. But I think that's been the big thing. It's that we've never really strategized about it.
Right. No, we didn't.
Whereas when Westley came to meet my parents, so I'm Latina, my parents are Salvadorian, like I'm their oldest child. Like, I remember growing up, I was probably like 7 or 8 years old. And my mom would say these things to me, like, we're like, "Oh, you probably should look to marry like a white man because it'll be easier for you to get by in this country," which is fucked up as that is. Like, that's kind of like my first influence. Jesus.
She's not wrong per se. It's just
it's
a little too logical.
Yeah,
She's not.
But so I remember hearing that from her and I was like, well, why? And I never really thought to ask more questions and like, okay, well, that's just mom's advice. And even when I was that young, I was like, okay, well, I can choose to take it or I can choose to ignore it. And even growing up in the beginning, and the reason why at the time when she said that to me, it didn't really bother me too much is because I was going to private school, like private Catholic school, where 80%, 90% of the dudes that I was meeting were white. So I'm like, oh, she probably says that I should date someone that's white because that's all that's available to me in these schools that I'm going to. And it wasn't until we moved to California and I stopped going to private Catholic school that I started to see, oh, shit, there's like Asian boys and there's Black boys and there's like Latino boys and then there's like Salvadorian and non-Salvadorian. So like I started to see that there were so many other men out there. But I mean, like that was the first introduction. So just having that as a backdrop, sort of a background, when I actually started dating, which wasn't until I was like 15 in high school, my first boyfriend was Salvadorian. And it was just because that's who I met and we connected. I never really thought about it from like, oh, okay, when you meet my parents, I have to like strategize this whole thing. And, you know, he came over and I expected my dad to hate him and I kind of expected my mom to kind of like him. But, you know, I just said, you know, I didn't think about it. It wasn't like I had to prep the person for anything. And they just met and my dad, like I thought, hated him the entire time that we were dating. And then like once we broke up, he was like, yeah, well, mommy, like I told you, like you can't be dating these men out there. Like you need to focus on your studies.
The typical parent line.
So like, you know, just focus on yourself. And I was like, okay, whatever. And for whatever reason, I just started meeting more Black men at that point.
A lot of chocolate Carls.
All the chocolate Carls. And interesting, when I met the first Black guy that I dated, I thought about what my mom had said to me when I was 7 years old. And I was like, well, I've already seen, because at this point I'm going into college. So I've gone to like visit where I'm going to go to school. Tons of white people everywhere. So I'm starting to think about this stuff and I'm like, well, my mom did say that one time that I should probably try to like date a white man, but he's not white and I don't care. So I'm not going to like not date him because he's not white. But oh shit, when I introduce him, like I'm going to have to do some like facilitation and coaching to sort of like educate them that, hey, this is a Black person, but it's not cool for you to call them Prieto in front of them, which Prieto is basically in Spanish
the N-word.
The N-word.
Darkness.
Which
oh my gosh.
Which like depending on like where you're from, like that can either be really offensive or it's just a way to describe someone that's darker.
And I'm named after the darkest actor on this planet. Like what's going on?
So those were things that I started to think about. So like when he met my parents, I was like, well, you have to make sure that you do these 4 essential things. Cause I think these are like the key to meeting like a Latina woman's parents so that you're not automatically on their shit list. So the very first one is first impressions matter. Like, I think with what you were saying, like I had already made a first impression, Westley, on your aunt, but it didn't matter because like culturally it was something else. It was completely different.
Right.
But I think with Latino parents, if you're well dressed, if the man comes in, he's well dressed, he's well spoken, and 2, you actually try to speak the language a little bit. So you try to throw in some Spanish in there, you know, that'll give you some brownie points. Because it shows that you're aware of the culture, you're aware of the language, and you're at least acknowledging it and being respectful to it. The other big piece is, I mean, all like Latino families love eating and they'll always make tons of food. So if you're coming over for like some sort of like lunch or dinner, you always have to be prepared to just like eat and keep eating and not stop eating until like there's like basically no food left. So I don't give a shit if you're full. You always like if they offer you seconds or thirds or fourths,
an alternate stomach real quick.
Because the minute that you say no, I don't want that, and Westley, you've been guilty of this.
Yeah,
you'll start getting side eyes.
I got the biggest side eye from your mom the one time. That shit was, man. I thought I was gonna die right there. I thought she was gonna pull the knife out. I thought she was gonna, you don't want my food? Like, no. It's just that I'm full. What does that mean? Like,
And then she's like, starts like calling you names in Spanish.
yeah, I'm like, all right, fine, I'll eat. Shit, like, I don't need these name calling.
It's like pellejo, que no le gusta mi comida.
I'm like, no, I like your food. I'm fucking full. What's the problem?
But like, food is such a big part of our culture that if you don't take seconds, like especially if it's the first time that you're meeting the parents, you're kind of insulting their ability to make delicious food that you want to keep eating. And I would say that the last thing is just being open to wanting to speak to them, and also, but being respectful as you're doing it. So like kind of taking an interest in who they are, where they're from. And this one, it becomes a little, it really depends, because at this point, if you're meeting the parents, usually there's a bigger family attached to it. And in at least my household, the siblings also have like an opinion. And if they like you, you're good. If they don't like you, they'll make your life impossible. So that's kind of been like, and that's more specific to me. I don't think all families are like that, but that's something else that's really
I'm
important.
cool with all your siblings, so.
Yeah, they like you.
Yeah.
Because they can tell between like what front you're putting up for the parents, and then they want you to be real.
The real one, yeah.
Yeah, like they want you to be real.
You gotta be real with their siblings.
Yeah. I'm always pretty real with them. I ain't trying to sneak you off into the basement and shit. Have sex with you and lure them with candy and shit. So I think that's kind of an impression on its own.
So those are the things that I would say. Oh, and the other thing too, this applies whether you're visiting the home or whether you're going out, but don't be a cheapo. Like, you'll get called out for like being tacaño or a codo. Like, those are the ways that we express that somebody's cheap.
Yeah.
But if you're coming over, just, and I think as the Latina in the relationship, you kind of have to suggest, hey, you should bring a bottle of this. Like, my dad loves tequila. Like, bring him a bottle of tequila and it'll be good. Or if we're going out for dinner, bring some cash. And like, when the check comes, be ready to be like, okay, here, I want to help with it. Because otherwise, you're never going to leave it down. Like, it's just.
Thing is, with Lina D's dad, he doesn't accept money. Like, I'll be like, yeah, I got it, I'll pay for you. Like, no, I got it. I'm like, but you can take this help though. He's like, no, but I don't want it. And it's like, all right, well, fine.
But it's
there have been times where I've gotten him drunk.
That's always a good thing. Always a good thing.
I'm sorry, it's just funny.
I actually just remembered another time I met someone's parent, but like totally unplanned. This is
oh shit, like it was one of those surprise.
Oh my god. So this Vicky was a college's friend's sister-in-law. And so we meet up at the promenade in Brooklyn. So this is like a couple years after school. Meet up at the promenade in Brooklyn. First date, like been talking for a while. Come to find out, her dad drops her off.
Oh.
But like, he knows what he's doing with the sole purpose of pretty much vetting me. So Vicky's dad drops her off. Vicky's dad is also a cop.
Oh,
so Vicky's dad just straight up said, yeah, I ran your name.
What?
I already know everything. Thank God, like, I dressed up to the dime. I had a blazer on. He's like, I appreciate you dressing up.
First impression.
Yeah, so that blazer probably saved my life. I could have been floating on the promenade right now. So yeah, so that was like the one time where I was not prepared at all. But like, yeah, first impression. Like, I always try to, like, mention earlier episode, like, you're going on a date, like, look respectable. Like,
yeah.
Dress up, get a haircut, eye contact while you're talking to him. Didn't know he was coming, but like, now I gotta adjust on the fly. So I was kind of shook. Like, when the whole cop thing came, I was like, oh.
It's like, oh no.
You ran your name though? Like, that's a bit much.
Like, so that was his baby. It was his youngest daughter. Parents are separated, so like that was like his baby. So he wasn't fuck around that shit. No. Like,
damn.
I was like, well, thanks for that heads up. Appreciate that.
He could have killed you right on the spot.
That's crazy. But yeah, there's all these particulars. So then once they met my first black boyfriend, it was kind of, like there were things that I did wrong. Like I didn't tell him like the whole like, hey, these are the phrases in Spanish that you should say. Or I didn't tell him about like, what was the other thing? Oh, with my dad, like that with, you can't like bullshit my dad. Like don't try to make small talk because they'll hate you. Like I didn't tell him things like that. So they were just like, we don't know about this one. And then obviously like that relationship didn't last. And then I had to bring around like, I think 2 or 3 other black men before my parents finally started to accept the fact that I had a preference for dating black men.
It's like I noticed a pattern. Chocolate.
It's just different shades of chocolate. What the fuck?
Mocha, caramel, dark chocolate,
Milk chocolate? No white chocolate. But yeah, it just takes prepping. And I think it's more of, I think a lot of people don't think about it, obviously based on like Wesley's and I's experience, but it always helps to just sit down and have a conversation with your significant other first to kind of gauge like what questions they have or like what they know about meeting like parents from your specific culture or ethnicity. And then it also helps, which what I did start doing is talking to my parents. So I'd be like, oh, so I'm seeing this other guy. And then they'll be like, oh, so when are we meeting him? And then I started giving myself some time because then I was like, well, I can't just be bringing around every single guy that I date. So I gave myself like 3 months. So if I was with this dude for longer than 3 months, then my parents met him. And I started making these rules and thinking about like, hey, what's the best way to prepare them? Because Latino parents could be brutal.
Gotcha. Yeah, I agree. I have pretty similar rules. Like I'll like constantly update my mom on like just life, like work, personal, like who I'm dating, and like same thing. Like I don't want to parade around like all these randos. And then after like if you're still around after 3 months, I'm like, hey mom, like when are your dad free? Like come by the house or we go out somewhere. And then so that's usually how I go about that. One thing that came to mind though, which I kind of struggle with personally, and I think a lot of our listeners might have as well, like I feel as though even in this day and age, like interracial dating is still somewhat tough and scary. Like,
I agree with that.
From our stories, like our parents aren't the most receptive to dating outside of your race or even culture. Like from Caribbean black to African black to American black, it's just 3 completely different like pathways. It's like I remember like high school and college, like just being kind of, to be honest, afraid to like date outside my race. I wasn't confident enough to like have to like pick sides or like educate both sides or like whatnot. So like that's been kind of tough. So I think like a big part of like interracial dating is you have to be prepared for like external pushback from society, from parents, from friends. I'm not saying you should care, but it's gonna be there whether you want to or not. Just like racism, sexism, xenophobia, all that stuff. It's gonna be there whether you want to or not. So like if you're dating someone outside your race or your family's really religious, if dating someone outside your religion, like just be prepared for potential pushback. And like if you're not mentally strong enough to handle that, your significant other is gonna feel that. And it's unfortunate. Like you may really like that person, but unfortunately, a lot of times, all these external factors all prevent that from being as smooth of and great of a relationship as it can be. Yeah.
And I think the one thing this might be more particular to Latinos, but maybe either of you could relate. There's inherently a lot of racism in the Latino culture, regardless of what country you're from, based on the shade of your skin. So Latinos that are darker have always gotten a worse rap, kind of similar with Black people in the U.S., by their fairer skin counterparts. And I have friends that are like Dominican that talk about this all the time, but it comes down to like a skin tone issue. And there's racism within the same countries if you're darker or lighter skin. And it's usually the lighter skin, fairer skin, white Latinos that will discriminate against Black Latinos. So it has nothing to do with the fact that you're just African American Black or Caribbean Black. It's just that if you're Black, period, there's an issue with it. And I've struggled a lot with that growing up, especially because as a Latina, you learn that you're a mixture of all races, right? So I then decided to do my ancestry.com because I was really curious to find out what the heck my race was. Because, you know, when you have to like check that in the census box, and I'm like, well, I don't look black. I'm hella shit not white, but like, what am I? So it was cool to just kind of see that breakdown and see that, okay, so I'm Native American. I'm also African. And I also have like some Iberian Peninsula influences in there. So what I kind of like anchored to was the fact that, hey, I'm also black. Like a part of my makeup is black. And if I'm black, that means my parents are black. So we're going to sit down and have this conversation, and we're going to talk about what it is to be Latino and the fact that we're not just, you know, some white people parading around and that's who we aspire to be. We actually have this makeup, and like part of our culture is sort of accepting the fact that there's the way that this diversity became ingrained in who our people are.
Right.
So it's kind of having that conversation. And once I did that, it was like, my dad was like, oh, well, no, like, I don't think it works like that. And I was like, nope, this is how it works. And it's like, and it took a couple of iterations of having that conversation. But eventually they're like, oh, okay, well, you know, we don't really see people that are darker skinned where I grew up. And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't mean that they're not there. And you start kind of having this like dialogue, and you start to educate them. And if you are going to be in an interracial relationship, or if you're going to date outside of your culture and your race or your ethnicity or your religion, you have to start to think about how can you bridge that gap for your parents? Because as you were saying, Brock, they're just sometimes not as open-minded about it.
Yeah. And like you said, like, yeah, just having those conversations over and over and over again. Like, our parents grew up together at small Caribbean island.
Right.
Yeah, everyone's black. Probably like 97% black. Everyone's Roman Catholic. So when you grow up for like 20-something years, 18, 20-something years before coming here, everyone looks exactly the same. Like, it's just kind of what you expect. Like, and then now, like, the world's so global and so interdependent, we could just easily migrate. Well, first world countries, I don't want to paint a broad picture. Most of us can easily migrate from country to country or state to state. So that's the kind of world we grew up in. So it's just trying to bridge the gap of mobility is totally different between our generation and their generation, where, like, I like to travel. I try to get my parents to travel, like, they just won't do it. They're like, we'll go to our Caribbean island and we'll visit family in Canada. Like, we've driven to Canada a bunch. Like, even we'll, like, most of the time drive, or we used to, like, fly to Buffalo, Albany, and then drive over. Like, just refuse to fly all the way. So, like,
that's so funny.
Yeah, so just that issue of mobility and just not everyone just looking exactly the same kind of thing. Just having more conversations around that. But it starts with you. Like, you have to be able to accept, like, I'm going to date outside of my race, religion, whatever, and cool. And now you have to, if your parents are important to you, you have to then pretty much try to educate them in order for a potential union with someone who doesn't look like your family to work.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Lina D has met my aunt. You know what? I'm not going to say anything negative about my aunt, but I'll say also that she's met some of my family members as well. Like, my relationship with my family is not the best for my own personal reasons that I won't get into on the podcast, but she has met. I've tried to make, I would say, my version of a concerted effort into kind of like maybe bridging some of the gaps between my family. I'm very close with like 3 of my cousins. I would say 2.5.
2.5.
2.5.
She's sometimes a cousin.
Yeah, she's sometimes a cousin. She's sometimes somewhere else in far, far away land. But she has met my godmother, who is my other aunt, and she is not crazy. And my godmother, you know, whenever I reach out to her from time to time, will ask, you know, how is she doing and stuff like that. So she does make a concerted effort. Like, let's say if I make the concerted effort to like talk to her, but like I said, there's that strained relationship there between myself and a lot of my family members. So while I'd like to share some things that's happened, I really haven't brought Lina D around to see a bunch of my family members because in one way, shape, or another, I just have something against them. So,
no,
yeah.
that's perfectly fine. Like, I'm in a similar situation where my family's huge. I have about 7 aunts and uncles on both sides. So each, I have like 14 in total.
Jesus.
Everyone's fucking like rabbits. It's probably like 3 to 5 per aunt or uncle. So there's like 50 first cousins. Lord knows how many second and third cousins. And
that's where the high libido comes from.
Yeah, man. Also, probably not wrapping that shit up. You probably should. And then
it's cream pie out here in these streets. Shit.
And then, yeah, so like over the years, like for various reasons, like just not close at all with most of them. So kind of like Westley, where when I say family, I consider that to be like my parents, my 2 brothers.
Right, your nuclear family.
Yeah, my godmother who I love to death, who's pretty much, I don't think she's related by blood, but pretty much like Caribbean families, like everyone who's older than you, and it's like a family friend, like they're your aunt. So like always call her like auntie, whatever. So yeah, so for me, like I'm just worried about the people who I still love and care about. That's who I want that person to meet. Everyone else, like,
they can kick rocks.
Yeah. We share blood, we share last name. That's not, I'll see you when I see you, but I'm not worried about your viewpoint on my significant other. So
right.
Yeah, so pick and choose your battles. Like this random cousin that you don't fuck with doesn't have to like a significant other or a random aunt or
really
uncle.
not.
Like,
it's
whoever who you keep in touch with regularly, you see or send a card to, whatever, stuff like that. Like, just pick and choose like your battles.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. It's more about my nuclear family and the siblings, because of course,
okay, all right,
they're important. But those were our thoughts on meeting the parents, especially from different cultures. We actually also did want to do a special shout out to Instagram account, We're Not Yelling, We're Latino.
Hey!
So for men out there that might be interested in dating Latinas and they haven't before, or they're about to meet the parents and they don't know quite what to do, it's a pretty cool account. They have some good stuff that might be relevant to that, with some funny memes and stories and jokes, but just giving a special shout out to them.
Yeah. Anyway. All right. Well, let us know what you think about meeting the parents. If you're in an interracial relationship, let us know what your trials and tribulations have been with meeting parents and family members and all that good stuff. You can hit us up on our Contact Us form at NoFreeDrinks.com. Or you can email us at NoFreeDrinks@gmail.com.
And thanks for joining us today at No Free Drinks. Don't forget that our episodes release every single Wednesday, of course, Hump Day. But the easiest way to stay in touch with us is to just subscribe to our podcast. And you can find us by searching No Free Drinks on your favorite podcast app. But for my Apple users, show us some love, especially if you love what you're hearing. Rate us and leave us a review. And specifically, if you're a big social media user, don't forget to follow us on Instagram. You can find us at _NoFreeDrinks. And in our bio, we have a link where you can easily connect to wherever we're playing our podcast, as well as our other social media platforms. And we hope that you loved today. Thanks for coming. I hope it was good for you too. This is Lina D. Kisses.
This is Wesley. Peace out, Girl Scouts.
Hey guys, this is Brock. Make love, not babies.